West Denver. Sleep deprived and heavily caffeinated.
All right, let's do this then.
This is the Jeff and Bill Show.
I don't agree with that.
They don't always agree, but hey, at least they have coffee.
Coffee.
And each other.
I love you, man.
God help us.
I want to bless him. We need all the help we can get.
Now here's Jeff Hunt and Bill Thorpe. The Jeff and Bill Show on News Talk 710 KNUS.
It's 6 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Tuesday, June 10th, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights, hottest takes from the right, left, and center, Colorado and California blue. California's a little red, on fire right now, but America Red, it all meets right here on the Jeff and Bill Show, where you're invited to be a part of the conversation by giving us a call. Phone lines are open, 303-696-1971, 303-696-1971, or texting us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. Got a lot to talk about today. You know, there's an investigation into Jared Polis taking place. This was something, a little bit of news, but in light of the terrorist attack in Boulder Sunday, last Sunday, a week ago, this last Sunday. Gosh, goodness gracious, 9 days ago. And then the riots taking place in Los Angeles. Government officials are actually suing Governor Jared Polis, alleging he ordered the state to turn over information to ICE.
Yeah, this is interesting because it's members of the state suing the governor, and these are Democrats. So, yeah, these are Dems suing the governor. So this is interesting. Yeah, this is an interesting part.
Suing the governor for violating a law he signed because you can coordinate with federal agents, but not all the time, and certain boxes have to be checked, and all. It's like pure... It's a perfect example of just the craziness that happens when you try to become a sanctuary state. We'll get into that here in just a few minutes. We'll give you an update on the LA riots that are taking place out there. Plus, Vic Vela is going to join us live in studio in the 8 o'clock hour, teaming up with him and some interesting folks like Yadira Caraveo to talk about shattering stigma, embracing hope, about how addiction doesn't care about your political party or even your wealth. It affects a lot of people across the spectrum, and so we'll be talking about an event I'm helping him with on Thursday. So it'll be a good conversation in the 8 o'clock hour. And then, Bill, this is one of the days where it really pays off to be a radio host.
Yeah, likewise. What do you mean?
We get free pancakes.
Oh, yes.
Coming
that is true.
In.
That'll be nice.
We are showcasing IHOP's latest new pancakes.
Yeah, and we're going to be out at
IHOP
tomorrow.
And they're bringing them by for us.
Yep, they're going to bring them by, and it's kind of a teaser for us being out at IHOP tomorrow. Yeah, 104th and I-25. 104th and I-25, we are broadcasting live, doing the show there. Come on out and see us. There's rumors they might actually not let us in the restaurant. I mean, they're going to put us on the patio. So we might be outside because it's going to be absolutely gorgeous. So we're kind of playing that one by ear. I'm excited if they let us outside. If not, we'll be inside. But either way, the best deal for breakfast that you can find in town tomorrow is at the IHOP in North Glen. It's 104th and I-25, $7.10. Gets you their big breakfast. We're talking about the eggs, sausage or bacon, the pancakes. I mean, you get the big deal breakfast for $7.10. Think about what it's going to run you to go through the fast food place. Yeah, you're going to spend more than that. It's going to cost more than that if you go to the Starbucks or whatever else you go as far as a coffee shop. And you don't have to spend that time making breakfast at home. Come hang out with us, even if you stop by for a cup of coffee, but we will send you on your day with the most delicious, most affordable, and freshly prepared breakfast at $7.10 at IHOP in North Glen. So come on out and hang out with us. We'll have fun, and you never know what's going to happen. Something weird always seems to, so sometimes I'm responsible.
It's a more Povich aspect to the show,
yes,
and it tends to rear its head.
Yes, it is. When we're in public.
We're in public.
It's so much fun.
All right, we've got lots to cover. Now is time for News and Comment with Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Good morning. Terrific Tuesday. 54 and sunny in Denver. Expecting a high of 88 today. It's summertime. Love it. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story. It's coming.
Just found a really great deep dive here from the Data Republican on X. So who is behind all these crazy riots in LA and that will be across the nation? Just like remember in the Summer of Love with BLM, remember who's organizing all that stuff?
Florida Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna on the paid rioters in L.A. creating all the chaos, the National Guard and Marines arriving to handle the dirt bags today.
With this specifically is being funded by an individual by the name of Neville Singham, who actually made his money by pushing communist Chinese propaganda, became a billionaire doing it. He's now funding, and the guy behind all of these protests was also behind and tied to the protests at Columbia University, pushing all of that BS.
Neville Singham is the man funding the riots. It's very obvious these are paid for commie terrorists in the streets leading this. As my computer just crashes, we'll get to that in just a second. There's a website called nokings.org, and it has all the plans for the commies and paid rioters to create the chaos and violence in the streets this week and into the weekend on Flag Day across the country. They have a map of the U.S. where they plan to raise hell, and there are 20 locations on that map up and down the Front Range. NoKings.org. Elon publicly backing DJT's stance on illegal immigration in California. He shared more posts criticizing Governor Newsom and LA Mayor Kami Bass for their handling of the riots. The terrorist throwing the rocks at police and federal vehicles has been identified as 40-year-old Elpidio Reyna. Investigators searching for him. I wonder how much money he made. He's charged with assault and faces up to 8 years in prison, and the FBI offering a $50,000 award for info leading to his capture. A resolution condemning the terror attack in Boulder has been passed by the U.S. House of Representatives. A resolution introduced by Colorado Congressman Gabe Evans outlines the history of suspect Mohammed Solomon, including his status as an Egyptian national illegally living here. The resolution also implies that the lack of cooperation between the state and local law enforcement and federal immigration authorities may have played a role in the attack. And, of course, you heard him right here on the Jeff and Billy Show yesterday morning. 280 members of the House voted for the resolution, including Colorado Democrats Brittany Pedersen and Joe Neguse. DJT visits Fort Bragg in North Carolina today to help kick off the Army's 250th birthday celebration. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth plans to join him at the base, home to about 57,000 troops. The White House says the two will honor the brave soldiers ready to defend our freedom. News brought to you by Lair Fireplace and Patio, Denver's premier source for everything fireplace, patio, and grills, locally owned and operated since 1954, online at lairfireplacepatio.com. Panthers win last night 6-1 over the Edmonton Oilers. They lead it 2-1 in the Stanley Cup Finals. 52 in Englewood, 51 in Broomfield, 54 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue on this Tuesday. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Your KNUS forecast for the Denver metro area calls for a mild start to this Tuesday. We'll be looking at temperatures into the mid and upper 50s. A little bit on the hot side today. Readings above average today and really the next few days as we'll be in the mid and upper 80s. Sunny and dry this Tuesday, near 60 for a low tonight. Morning sunshine with building afternoon clouds and some hit and miss storms Wednesday through Friday.
Weather sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free, no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com.
I'm meteorologist Mark Huer in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
All right, Billy, let's kick it off. Are you familiar with the term UAC, unaccompanied child?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is kind of a wild story. These kids just show up at the border, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just wild to me that anyone would ever do this to their children, but I guess either they're orphans or their parents want them to come into America and hope it's a better life for them, whatever.
Yeah.
But they show up in some pretty big numbers, like tens of thousands each year, an unaccompanied child. And then if there's no family, or if there's kind of an extended family, they become referred out to them, okay? And they become the kind of referrals that are supposed to take care of these kids. Well, once the kid is given over to that referral, that parent, or not parent, kind of extended family.
Yeah, just caregiver.
Caregiver, yep, good term. Sometimes they just never show up for their court dates again. And that's where you get the 300,000 UACs have gone missing. That's where that number has come from. Not because they've actually been trafficked, but because they haven't necessarily shown up for the court dates. Now, the Trump administration is concerned about these, and they're concerned that these kids are being treated well, that they're not being trafficked, that they're not being abused, that type of thing. So they want better tracking of who these referrals are, these parent or these caregivers that are watching over these kids. So they asked Governor Polis to provide some information about who these people might be in our state. And initially he declined to do so, then changed his mind, and now government officials are suing Jared Polis for alleging he ordered the state to turn over information about these UAC caregivers to satisfy an ICE subpoena. That violates a law that Jared Polis signed himself. That this is where being a sanctuary state entangles you, because this should be a no-brainer in my mind. ICE wants to know who the caregivers are for these UACs that are living in your state, some more detailed information about them. And because you have claimed the mantle of being a sanctuary state, you're actually restricted from being able to provide this information. Here's the Denver Post. Colorado Governor Jared Polis directed state employees to turn over information on sponsors of undocumented children to federal immigration authorities, despite protests that the order violated state laws limiting cooperation, according to a new lawsuit filed by a senior official. Scott Moss, a director within the State Department of Labor and Employment, alleged in the suit filed late last week that Jared Polis personally decided to comply with an administrative subpoena from U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE. The subpoena was part of, quote, investigative activities to locate unaccompanied alien children and to ensure that they were being cared for, according to the lawsuit. But Moss, in a 4-page memo protesting the legality of the request, alleged that the subpoena is for purposes of finding minors to deport, they say. Moss is now asking a Denver District Court judge to immediately block Polis's order to furnish the information, which Moss has directed to complete by the end of late last week. In the suit, Moss's attorneys allege that Moss and other employees are being asked to choose between illegally turning over information or risking termination for refusing Polis's directive. Here's an update. In a stipulation filed by his attorney Friday, Polis agreed not to fulfill the subpoena or direct any state employee to do so until after the judge has ruled on Moss's request to block Polis's directive. The subpoena issued by ICE to the state in April, not signed by a judge, requested employment and family records for the sponsors of undocumented children separated from their parents, according to the lawsuit. Okay, so these kids show up at the border and they place them with these sponsors, which are typically family members, and they want updated information, including birth dates and addresses of those that are overseeing these children. Moss was involved in handling the request as the director of the Labor Department's Division of Labor Standards and Statistics. The suit says Polis's office had decided in early May not to comply with the subpoena because state law prohibiting certain information sharing with federal authorities. I love, we keep, Polis is right out there. We're not a sanctuary state. We're not, but I'm going to sign a law prohibiting certain information sharing with federal, prohibiting certain information sharing with federal authorities. But that stance shifted near the end of the month. The suit alleges when Polis, quote, personally decided, unquote, to reverse course and turn over the requested information to ICE. A governor spokesperson confirmed that the state intends to comply with the subpoena. That decision came around the time that Polis signed a new law creating additional protections against sharing personal information with federal authorities. So he's signing the law and then decides to personally disobey it. Colorado law prohibits state and local employees from sharing personal identifying information with immigration authorities. Oh, my goodness. Unless required by law or a court order. Polis signed that law in 2021, and Moss then drafted rules further enshrining the protections into practice. Moss, the suit alleges, repeatedly told Polis's office that complying with the subpoena would violate those laws. He reiterated those objections in the memo he wrote last month, in which he argued that complying with ICE's request would renege on promises made by state employees and by Polis to protect immigrants' information. In short, this sort of subpoena's compliance stopped being a viable option for Governor Polis when he signed a law banning exactly this sort of immigration enforcement collaboration on threat of fining state workers heavily, leading Governor Polis and state officials to reassure immigrants they can safely provide us information without fear, all against a backdrop of abusive practices by the ICE officials we'd be telling where to raid, Moss wrote in the memo. In a statement to the Denver Post, Polis spokesperson wrote that Polis's office has determined that the state should comply with the subpoena because it requested information related to, quote, investigative activities, unquote. State law directs employees to cooperate with criminal investigations, even if that includes sharing personal information that's otherwise protected. After careful consideration of the subpoena and Colorado law that allows for the sharing of information to support timely criminal investigations, we do believe complying with the subpoena meets requirements set forth in law, and it is in the service of investigating and preventing criminal activity, Specifically, the subpoena states Homeland Security investigators is conducting investigative activities to locate unaccompanied alien minors to ensure that these children are appropriately located, properly cared for, and are not subject to crimes of human trafficking or other forms of exploitation. So, look, this shouldn't even be an issue. If you're not a sanctuary state and ICE comes and says, hey, we're trying to make sure we know where these kids are and who's watching out for them and they're not being abused and trafficked and we want to check in on them, we need some more information from your state to check in. That seems like a no-brainer to me. The only reason to get in the way of this is because you believe that somehow illegal immigrants deserve to be in this country and you don't want to see them possibly deported. And I don't want to ignore that could be part of the consequence of this. Yeah, there may be deportations that take place. But why in the world are we just allowing unaccompanied children into this country and not following up when you have numbers nearly 300,000 that aren't showing up for their court dates? Seems like a no-brainer to comply with this. But this is an example, Bill, of Colorado being a sanctuary state. Your thoughts, sir?
Well, I want to know, did the Trump administration lose their list? Because there's a national database of these unaccompanied minors. It's held nationally. ICE has access to it. They've had access to it since the Trump administration started. They had access to it under the Biden administration, previous Trump administration. They have access to it. I believe the list is held by Health and Human Services because, of course, we're not going to just release kids into the nation and not know where they are. There's going to be a national database. Why did they lose their database?
It's not updated.
Did they? So they didn't work on it? Okay.
Well, I think they're trying to work on it.
But can't. But what information? I mean, I would assume that all of that information would be available. They could track them down. What information could the state provide that they wouldn't be able to do based on a national search for records? They have access to personal information, Social Security numbers. They have W-2 forms. They have access to everything. They have access to Social Security. If you have the idea, okay. If you have them here placed with residents of the U.S., which is what this normally happens, you have family members, etc., you have a paper trail. You know where these people live. You have Social Security numbers. You have W-2s. You have everything. All of that can be accessed by the federal government. They hold all of that information. All of this can be cross-referenced. They can take their list of kids, look at who the adults are, and cross-reference that list of who the adults are with the federal database of records. They have the info if they wanted to do it. This is unnecessary. I mean, again, regardless of whether or not Polis does or does not, the information is unnecessary, in my opinion. They have access to it. They have the ability to find this information if it is really worthwhile for them to do so. I understand the pushback from the state because we've seen numerous reports of people showing up for their scheduled immigration hearings, getting picked up and then deported. So the idea that, hey, these kids aren't showing up for their hearings, I'm a bit skeptical on the idea is we're just checking to see they're okay. And we're not going to add them to the list of who we've deported. So because number get bigger. That's what Stephen Miller needed. Number go bigger. We're not deporting enough people. I need bigger number. Give me bigger number. This is an easy way to make the number go bigger. This is a really easy way. So again, I'm not necessarily in the camp of Jared Polis giving over the list. I'm not in the camp of the people that are suing. I think it's rather stupid both ways a little bit because the federal government has access to this. But I see the skepticism. I understand the skepticism because of how the government has been going about processing the information and who they're arresting. They told us they were going after the violent criminals first. Well, some of these people being picked up right now, and this is the first round, because we're just over 100 days into the Trump administration, 150 or so, this would be that first wave, and we're not picking up all the criminals. We're not going after violent criminals. So that hasn't been held true. So I understand the skepticism behind it. What I can't figure out in this entire process is how the administration can't figure this out, because they have all the info. They have all the background information about where these people live. And if they don't, that's another issue. Now they can come here and say, now we need to find not these unaccompanied minors, but these individuals that should be taking care of the people. Help us find them. That seems to be more of a directive rather than just give us an entire list.
So the Office of Refugee Resettlement is the ones that look over these UACs, okay? Once the Office of Refugee Resettlement finds a sponsor for a UAC and places them with a sponsor, they are no longer required to maintain contact with the UAC or sponsor, okay? So the way it's been set up in the past is once you hand them off to a sponsor, which can be a family member or not, there's no requirement for them to maintain contact. And so for years, think about the Biden years, those types of things, though you didn't have quality follow-up. And now you have the federal government trying to take this more seriously. They're working with states to identify where these people are. And the state of Colorado going, nope, we're not going to work with you. By the way, we'll work with you if a certain box is checked. But if you're just investigating where these kids are, we're not going to work with you.
Again,
we're not gonna work to help you find out where these kids are.
Again, what information does the state possess that the feds don't, based on these sponsors? Social security numbers, history of addresses,
Social security of illegal immigrants.
Work? No, the sponsors.
Right, they might be other illegal immigrants, family members.
But they would have a tracking number if they are in this country and they're waiting for a hearing.
Why not
they have
work?
a tracking number. No.
Why not work with them?
Hang on.
But why? You're going, I'm not going to work with them because you should have that data to begin with?
And talking of work, if these people are in the country, they're going to be working or they're going to be receiving federal funds. Where's the check going? Again, the information exists. That's the thing I'm pushing back on. The information exists. Chase down the information. And if you are missing some of that, then reach out to the states. But I'm hard-pressed to figure out what the state holds.
But they're willing to help. That's a distraction. You guys should have the data. You shouldn't be asking states is a distraction from the actual problem here.
Well,
you have kids that are not accompanied, that they can't find. And the state is refusing to work with them.
You said the government was taking it more seriously. Are they? Have they gone 100%. Through this list? No, not necessarily. They're telling us they can't find these kids, but they have the information to track the people that are the sponsors. That information exists. So now...
Initially.
Yeah. So keep going. So what information would the state have that the feds don't? They're not going to be drawing necessarily...
information.
Like what? Because the housing records would be national as well. Any sort of financial...
Really? Your housing record is national?
Yeah, it can be.
Who's the National Housing Registry?
If you have, we'll have to go through it, but if you have...
If you rent, you fill out a national housing registry?
Well, hang on a sec here. But if you rent, you're going to be receiving what? Money. How do you get paid? You're going to have to... Yeah. No,
if you're an illegal immigrant, you're getting paid cash.
But here, hang on a sec, though. But again, what we're going to have is the idea, if these people are, again, we're freeloaders, right? Because they're freeloaders. That's the thing here. They're in here getting all these government checks, all these government freebies. That would be trackable. You'd have to be sending that support somewhere. That's trackable. What information, and then if so, what information would the local state have that the national people wouldn't have? If they're paying rent based on cash, local wouldn't have that either. Local wouldn't have that either.
You're
it wouldn't
missing
solve your
the
problem.
point on this.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are. You're absolutely missing the point.
No,
the
I'm not.
point is the state is refusing to provide any type of information to the federal government with regards to tracking these unaccompanied minors out of this philosophical belief that if you coordinate at all with the federal government, you're going to be bad. This is wrong. It doesn't matter if the federal government has all this information in its hands. It clearly needs some help, and it's trying to get the state to help it, and the state refuses to do so, and you're dealing with kids here.
But what is the federal government asking for help with them doing? Are they really concerned about the well-being of these kids to find them? Or is it just make number go bigger when we're deporting them, which would then not be okay inside of a sanctuary city or state? And so, but again, I push back on the idea that the feds, from what I see, don't need this information. I see nothing that shows they've exhausted their ability to find these kids. All of that information should be available. And if they can't find them, that's another issue. And then we can come in and talk about all the people that are taking care of these kids that have disappeared. Then we can talk about it.
Why?
But just
why is then? Why not right now?
Because I'm not convinced.
We got to go and figure out our own data analysis processes at the federal government before we actually ask the states.
Oh my God!
What's wrong with asking the states right now?
What's wrong with asking the feds to do their job? To run through the database themselves.
They're doing their job.
No,
Bill,
they're
and they're
not.
asking for help. And
No,
because
they're
we're a
not.
sanctuary state,
No, they're not.
we refuse to do it.
No, I'm not convinced the feds that we can't do it. And you're talking about, this is too difficult for the feds to figure out, so the states have to do it now. No. So it's too difficult for the feds, but now the states are going to have to. So now you put the onus on the states. No, go do the work yourself. The federal government has the database. The distraction is asking the states, because then it's
Why wouldn't you
saber-rattling.
want as much information? If you're trying to rescue kids from human trafficking, who the hell cares who has the database? Get access to it. Get as much help as you can. Get as much information as you can.
Aren't you assuming these kids are being trafficked?
Bill, if there's one kid being trafficked, why wouldn't you want to stop it?
Again, we're not going to go to the bromide of if it only saves one life, because you're really not going to like that when we talk about the Second Amendment. So don't go, don't go to the if it
you're
only
jumping
saves.
all over the place.
No, Jeff, hang on a second.
You
Jeff,
have the
no.
federal
Just a second
government
ago,
trying
Jeff,
to rescue kids, and the states
Just a second ago, you went to if it only saves one life, it's worth it.
What's wrong with an employee in the state of Colorado providing data to the federal government if it saves one kid?
What if it doesn't save the kid? What if the kid's just fine and he ends up in a country where he knows nobody?
He knows nobody?
Knows nobody.
Is he already in a country that he knows nobody?
He's here with family members, and he's been here for a while, so yes, he knows people here. Yes, and he's established part of a life. He's probably going to school.
Bill,
but again,
where did he come from?
I know, but your assumption is here, oh my God, all these people are being trafficked.
Did
we don't see that.
Did he just appear in another country?
I don't understand what you mean by this.
Well, I think he was born in another country, wasn't
he? Yeah.
So somebody in another country knows him?
But we're not dropping people off in the country in which they originate from. He could be from Mexico and be dropped off in El Salvador.
Are kids being doing that? Is there evidence that kids are doing that? They're doing that to kids?
I'm saying that we have dropped people off in countries that is not their place of origin or birth. And we've dropped off people in places that shouldn't have been deported into those places. We've done that before. So all I'm saying is that
this is really all just about preventing deportations, isn't it?
No, it's about having the federal government do their work. Check the list. Why can't the federal government do alerts and check the list?
Bill, this is about preventing deportations. You know that. That is why.
In part for the kids,
the state is not willing to work with the federal government that's trying to track kids that have disappeared. They can't find them. They don't know where they are. They haven't heard from them. Okay? So they're outreaching to the state. Can you provide us any information in order to find these kids? And the ultimate goal in not working with the federal government is to prevent deportations.
Then why if we're worried about them?
That is the definition of being a sanctuary state.
But it's a sanctuary state. But again, a minute ago, it was about finding these kids because they're being trafficked. And now it's, they're just preventing deportations.
No,
I'm saying.
I'm explaining that's why the state won't work with the federal government. That's the whole point.
Yeah, in part, yes.
They're willing to let kids go trafficked.
Yeah, that's an assumption you're making that hasn't been proven.
Well, it might be helpful to know where the kids are if you want to know if they're being trafficked or not. Oh, boy. Join the conversation, 303-696-1971, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line, 720-819-5115. I guess if they have this great list of where all the illegal immigrants are, then they would all be deported already. But they're not, because the list doesn't exist. They just came across the border. All right, we'll continue. Let's talk alarm detection systems. Reliability isn't optional when business security is on the line. It's absolutely essential. Businesses trust alarm detection systems for the highest level of service and expertise. Think about the time you could be saving using one source for your cameras, keycard access, fire and intrusion systems. ADS offers it all. Alarm detection or expert alarm installation and testing by highly trained technicians, 24/7 professional monitoring, same day or next day service upon request, dedicated teams for cameras, access control, and fire alarms, and over 300 security professionals working for you. Choosing ADS means your businesses stay protected and will be ready to open tomorrow. They combine human monitoring with the latest AI camera technology to prevent crime in real time, trusted by small and large businesses, including many Colorado businesses. Their security experts will review your system for free. Go to adsalarm.com to schedule your appointment today. adsalarm.com, alarm detection systems, the first choice of Front Range and Colorado businesses. adsalarm.com. We'll continue with your phone calls and texts. Boy, they're coming in hot. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. We've kicked it off hot this morning. So ICE is asking the state of Colorado to provide some information. It wants birth dates and addresses that the state would know that the federal government doesn't know with regards to the sponsors of unaccompanied minors that have come across the border here. And a number of these folks are not showing up for court dates, to the number of close to 300,000 unaccompanied minors that have disappeared into America. And the Office of Refugee Resettlement, which is in charge of tracking them, oftentimes once they found a sponsor, placed them with a sponsor, no longer required to maintain any type of contact. And so they don't really know where these kids are. The Trump administration wanting to track them down, asking the state of Colorado for information related to where these sponsors are. Jared Polis originally saying, I'm not going to work with you, then deciding, yes, I am going to work with you, asking the state to comply. The state employees now suing the governor, saying, I'm not going to comply because it's going to make me in violation of the law you signed, Governor. So who's right in this? Should they be working with the federal government, or as these employees, state employees, saying, you're just going to set these kids up to be deported? Let's go to the phone lines. Rod Littleton. Good morning, Rod. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Morning.
Good morning, gents. So let's look at this. If a police officer takes a kid for whatever reason, he becomes a ward of the state. There are organizations or there are agencies that have to track that child, track the process. So why are we not doing that in the state? The feds don't do that. The state does. So when the feds come to the state and say, hey, we want this information or we need it, why is that a problem for the state to give? Because their job is to make sure that these kids are taken care of. If they're not showing up, if they're not required to contact the feds, I don't understand what the problem is. You're worried about these kids being deported. I'm worried about their welfare. We already know that there have been numerous cases of these kids that have been found that have been abused, that are trafficked across the state, every state in the country. So let's stop playing this political BS and let's help these kids and let the government get to work on doing that. The state has got to do something. I'm tired of these agencies bickering back and forth. Well, we're not going to work with you because we don't like what you're doing. I don't care. We're all supposed to be in it for the same reason, and that's for the people, the citizens, the kids. If you don't want to arrest the adults, we'll figure out another way to do that. If you don't want to help with that, but the kids, you have to do something. The state is required to keep track of the kids that they have in their care. Why are we not doing that with these illegal kids for their welfare?
Rod, how do we know that the state isn't tracking them? Right now, the state is just saying they're not sharing the information. They could be tracking them. They could have the information.
Why are we not sharing it? But why are we not sharing it?
Are you convinced Rod, are you convinced that the federal government is concerned about human trafficking, or are you convinced that they are concerned about illegal immigrants?
I'm concerned that the Biden administration opened the floodgates and allowed all these kids come in with people that are not related to them, trafficked, and we need to figure that out. If that means that we share that information so we can figure it out, so be it.
But those people would be on a national database. Rod, those people would be on a national database. There's a national database.
Not necessarily.
Yes.
How many people slip through the border without any contact?
Well, then,
we
Rod,
know
they
that
wouldn't
the
be.
Biden
Hang on a sec. Rod, hang on.
Dropped the ball.
Rod, then we wouldn't have any list anyway. You wouldn't have a list in Colorado. You wouldn't have a list in California. You wouldn't have a federal list. If they slipped under the border and came in here and nobody knows they're here, you wouldn't have a list. They wouldn't.
You're right about that.
So let's start working together.
But Rod, Colorado giving the feds the list doesn't solve the problem of the illegal that snuck in here under the cover of dark. That person's not on a list.
No, but it takes care of the one.
Right, but
it comes down to the kids. I don't care about sharing that date. I'm worried about the kids. That's what we have to look at.
Every year, you have to update your Christmas list. I mean, you end up with people that move all the time. Federal government doesn't track where you move to, or if you live in an apartment or a different apartment.
Yeah, they would have that information if you're drawing either services or if you're drawing a paycheck. You'd have that information with the Social Security Administration and the IRS.
And if they don't.
And if they don't, what do you mean? I don't understand.
If you're not drawing a federal service,
well, here's the idea,
and you're not filing your taxes.
Okay, then aren't you exactly the example that Rod had earlier about coming under the dark of being illegal and not being on a list?
You could totally do that and just not.
No, you wouldn't be on a list, and you wouldn't be in here. You would be here illegally.
But
you
again,
would be on a list.
The point being,
so even if the Colorado had the list, there'd be nobody on the people you're targeting wouldn't be on the list. That's the problem.
Yeah, they would. They would. Somebody could be on a state list that's not on a federal list, of course. The state gets a lot more information.
But the deal is,
Rod,
if the kids are not being some way to keep track of them like we have to do in law enforcement, and they just are now to the wind, we have no idea what's going on.
Rod, and I agree with you. And the point on all of this is to keep the federal government in the dark. That's the point of this. All right, Rod, appreciate it. We got to get to You Choose the News. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. The phone lines are hot and so are the text messages as we debate whether or not the state of Colorado should be coordinating with ICE, federal immigration officials, when it comes down to tracking the sponsors of these unaccompanied minors that are showing up at the border. We'll continue that conversation into the next hour, but some much needed levity right now. So you choose the news.
Yes. Let's break the tension with a little frivolity. It's America's favorite fake radio news game show. You choose the news. Yes, I've scoured the interwebs for moments this morning to find really dumb stories about us humans, giving them even more ridiculous headlines to play this fake radio news game show. Why? Because those in charge have no idea we are doing this. When Jeff and I are left unsupervised, this is exactly how things go sideways. And yes, we are going to be wasting some valuable KNUS airtime, but shh, it's a secret. Don't share, otherwise we are going to be in trouble. Alrighty, now, as always, Blake Olson joins us from the news department. Gentlemen, here are your headline choices this morning. Headline number 1, famous tourist. Headline number 2, ask the Baja Men. Headline number 3, Back to the Future. And headline number 4, maybe they could use a map. Mr. Hunt, your choice, sir.
Doc, I'm back.
Yes.
To the future.
It's back to the future. Quick, Marty, we must get to 1995, or maybe we need to get to Windows 1995. It is 2025, and the FAA has finally decided to stop using floppy disks and using Windows 95 for air traffic controlling. Yes. The director of the agency says he wants to replace the archaic system. Yeah, Windows 95, and they use floppy disks. He said the whole idea right now is to replace the system. No more floppy disks or paper strips. Paper strips? Paper flight strips are things still being used. They're pieces of cardstock on which key details of a single flight, such as call sign, aircraft type, and altitude, are printed or handwritten, and they still use them in 2025. Now, in 2023, an FAA assessment found that over a third of the nation's air traffic control systems are unsustainable, and some are starting to fail. Looking at you,
really?
DIA. Looking at you. Yes. So we got some issues. The problem is this costs money. Lots of money. Sony last made the last new floppy disk in 2011, so don't make them anymore, and we're still using them in the government. The issue is that, both the Republicans and Democrats didn't want to pay the money to upgrade the system, because, that's hard to go back to constituents
how much pork is in these bills?
Yeah,
gosh, if there's anything you could spend money on.
Oh, yeah. But again, who's your constituency?
That's
the problem.
100%.
That's the issue.
You're exactly right.
That's the problem. All righty. Okay, Mr. Olson, choose carefully, sir. Famous tourist, ask the Baja Men, or maybe they could use a map.
Maybe they could use a map.
Yeah, maybe they could use a map. It's intended to be an ultra-modern central London office that will serve as Google's home base for decades. They're spending a new billion-dollar headquarters, but they have a pest, and they just can't find a way to root them out. Foxes. They have a fox infestation at the Google headquarters in London. First reported in the newsletter London Centric, it was confirmed by sources familiar with the construction of the building. It's been a rolling 3-year saga. Some foxes have begun to dig burrows into the perfectly manicured grounds at the building, and they even have set up a nest on the roof. Yes, the canines have taken over the rooftop of the billion-dollar Google Central London office space. Now, foxes are not that unusual in and around London because, well, they eat rodents. Yes, that means rats.
Yeah.
Lots of rats.
Love foxes.
Yes.
There's an old saying that you either have mice or you have cats.
Yeah, exactly.
You have one or the other. Foxes. Or in this case, foxes.
Yep,
so.
exactly.
Foxes
so that's the thing
are great.
That's the issue, though, is remember this. The foxes are putting up home right around the Google offices. That means they found a food source.
Yeah, right.
Means they found rats.
That's right.
What does the fox say?
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
No
all
doubt.
Right. I was going to do that, the song, but I wasn't sure to begin. Bing, 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 bing. Okay. All right. Final choice this morning, Jeff. Famous tourist or ask the Baja Men?
Ask the Baja Men.
Yeah,
Who let the dogs
Baja
out?
Men, yes. Who let the dogs out? Well, in Tehran, nobody. Iranian authorities have expanded a ban on dog walking in public to multiple cities nationwide, citing health, social order, and safety concerns. It echoes a 2019 police directive that barred walking dogs in Tehran. Now it's into 17 other cities. They are saying that consider that petting dogs or coming into contact with their saliva is ritually impure. It's also a symbol of Western cultural influence. So no dogs. Bad dogs, stay in the house. You can't walk your dog. I just want to remind everybody what Josh Billings said, that a dog is the only thing on earth that loves you more than he loves himself.
Yeah.
And that's not allowed in Tehran.
This is the truth.
Kind of says a lot about where they see the world. Alrighty, that's the
Yeah,
end of
right.
it,
That's
man.
not going to work out too well in Beverly Hills with your
No, it's
lattes
not.
and a little toy
Yeah.
poodle walking.
Don't tell Paris Hilton about the no dog.
Yeah, right.
Okay, alrighty, that's it. Any Tuesday news, back to you, sir.
All right, Bill and I will get back into the debates, plus we'll give you the latest on what's happening in Los Angeles. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS. We'll make you mad again here in a sec.